should get these separated. Luna, are you fucking serious?
Hey, everybody! Zach is talking to my dog because she's being a spaz. Luna. Luna. Go get a toy. Go get your bone. Come on.
Let me separate these out.
He's going to separate brackets out because he's unprepared. At least he brought them, though.
I am prepared. Look, I'm right here. I have all the brackets. These are MCU.
Mickey. I have 2 more results on my phone as well.
Oh, you do?
Yep.
From who?
From Josh and his girlfriend.
Shout out to Josh and his girlfriend.
Shout out to Josh and his girlfriend.
Lots of Pixar results.
So for those of you that do not know, today's stream is going to be about the MCU bracket that is posted on our Just Browsin website, which let me pull that up for you so I can go through how to get to it again, because we are the Just Brackets podcast. And I'm just going to let the dog be crazy in the background because she's leaving us alone. Alright. I guess I should probably go into the stream and see if we can actually hear ourselves talking.
Yeah, that'd be a good check.
Before we do a 2-hour episode of... Yeah, we can hear you smacking the papers against the...
Oh, I was like, what is that I'm listening to?
I guess I should probably go into the stream. Yeah, alright.
That looks like a Call of Duty loading screen, that little Twitch thing. It looks like a Black Ops 3 loading screen.
I bought that when I was trying to stream and take it serious as my transitions and stuff. I thought it looked cool.
It is kind of cool. It reminds me of a Black Ops 3 thing.
So all of the transitions and stuff were bought. Just it's all the same layout, and someone already built it and everything. So I just got to implement it. And so I liked it 3 or 4 years ago when I first bought it, and I just figured we'd use that for now until we get more than 6 followers.
Yep, sounds good. So we're live, right?
We're live.
We just haven't started recording yet.
We just haven't started the actual podcast yet. But
well, I'm ready to roll when you are.
All right.
I'm thinking it'll be a good idea to start off with, I'll cover the results from the movie franchise brackets and the Pixar brackets, and then we can launch into our discussion of the MCU bracket. Does that sound good?
Yeah, and I think we'll just probably try and go quick with those because I feel like MCU could take a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to run through some more results because we did get a bunch of results. So,
all right, we're gonna start the podcast right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another beautiful episode of Just Browsin.
Beautiful.
Phenomenal. I would say phenomenal. But
phenomenal.
That doesn't go. Hopefully, everyone had a great 4th of July weekend.
Yes.
Hopefully, you had fun celebrating with friends and family, shooting off some fireworks, drinking some beer, having a nice old-fashioned American barbecue. And today we're gonna bring you another bracket, as we have discussed, and this time it's going to be the MCU bracket that we have created, which is on the Podbean website. If you would like to go take a look, it's on the Podbean website. You can either click on the brackets page or scroll down, and you will see a link under the Pixar bracket that you can click on, print it off, or just look through it and let us know what your favorite Marvel movie is. So... But first, our terrible co-host who forgot the Pixar brackets
brought them this time.
We're going to go through our Pixar results from some other people that filled them out, and then we're also going to quickly go through, I guess we'll probably go through our movie franchise brackets that we do have, and then we'll go through the Pixar ones real quick before we jump into the MCU. So
So this is a very, we joke all the time about being the Just Brackets podcast. This is going to be definitely a Just Brackets episode. So we have, thanks to my lovely fiance who has been hyping up this podcast to everyone that she works with during night shift, she has gotten quite a few results actually from not only the movie franchise bracket that we put together a long time ago, and also the Pixar movie bracket that we just recently covered 2 episodes ago. and a bunch of results for the MCU bracket that Matt and I are going to be discussing today. So I'm going to run through really quickly since the movie franchise bracket is the oldest one. If you're listening to this episode and you have not heard our movie franchise bracket series of podcasts, I think we did 3 of those. Go back and check those out. And we read some results at that time, obviously in addition to Matt's selections and my selections. But here are some additional ones. And then I'll cover some of the Pixar results from last time. Since you guys know what Matt selected and what I selected, you'll get an idea of what some other people thought their favorite Pixar movies were. And then we'll move into the MCU bracket. So going back to the movie franchise bracket. So again, if you haven't listened to those episodes, we had 64 movie franchises. And the guidelines were basically any movie franchise that had more than 3 movies.
Or 3 or 4.
Because we discussed, and it was like 3 is a trilogy. More than that is like a full-on franchise that it could be 4, it could be 10.
So like just a quick blurb too on that. Like Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit were considered one franchise because we lumped those together. They technically are the same franchise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
first one up. It looks like from Taylor, she selected Indiana Jones as her all-time favorite movie franchise, which I think is the first one I've seen.
Her and Chris would have been, could be great friends.
Good for Taylor. I'm a big fan of the Indiana Jones series, so good for her.
I think that might, whatever, keep going.
Eugene, Lord of the Rings. So Lord of the Rings / The Hobbit. That's a good pick. I think we've seen a couple of those before. Alyssa, it looks like it came down to Star Wars and Harry Potter, and she never did make a decision. She kind of just put both in there. So I think she was paralyzed with indecision, and she just put Star Wars, Harry Potter. So there you go. So that's someone who's very, very close to our own hearts there.
Yeah. Someone that we will give credit to.
Partial credit. Partial credit to each of our brackets. This one's unnamed, both hosts equally. But we have an Alien selection. So the Alien franchise, all-time favorite for whoever filled this one out. We have for Kimberly, Resident Evil.
Oh, another terrible
That's a pretty
movies.
Surprising. I like the Alien selection. I'm not a big fan of the Resident Evil selection. I mean, I like the Resident Evil movies; they're entertaining. But like, as your favorite franchise of all time,
and we're not dissing you. You know, everyone has their own opinions.
That's why we're going through these.
But
results.
We are dissing you because
I mean, everyone, everyone's got their own.
It's not Harry Potter or Star Wars, so we're dissing
you. This one is the absolute most absurd selection I've seen thus far. Going through these results, Clarice picked Medea. It was Medea versus Twilight in the championship, and she picked Medea. That is absolutely fucking insane. So, good for you, I guess. To each their own. But
no, not good for you.
That's absolutely absurd. Danielle looks like she had Fast and Furious franchise. So I think that's actually the first one I've seen for Fast and Furious franchise, which is a little bit surprising because that seems to be like one of the most famous franchises that are still going in Hollywood.
Fast 14
for Devin, he had Jason Bourne. So good pick for Devin.
Not bad.
I'm a big fan of the Jason Bourne franchise. And Alyssa picked Underworld.
Okay.
So we have an Underworld and a Resident Evil pick in there somewhere. That's kind of crazy.
So, and I've thought of this before. I didn't talk to Zach at all about it, but I'm just going to let everyone know now. I am going to work to build a spreadsheet on our Podbean website. It's going to be another, link under the brackets. It's probably just going to be bracket results, and I'm just going to tally up, the champions of all the brackets and just say who's won what. So,
ooh, that'll be interesting. So we can know which franchise or which Pixar movie had the most votes.
So if you want to, have a say in this, or you have someone, whether you listen to the episodes, in whatever order, feel free to leave a comment on the episode and just say who you had win, or
send us an email or something.
Or go on Instagram and just say whatever, and we'll tally that in, and eventually we'll go through those results at some point and just say.
Because hopefully over time we'll have a decent amount of results at some point, and then we'll go, okay, we've had 35 people or 50 people or however many fill out brackets, and here's who got the most votes for best movie franchise.
Here's who has good taste, and here who has bad taste.
Right.
So.
All right, so you ready to hear some Pixar results?
Let's hear some Pixar.
Okay, this is an unnamed bracket, but we have a Finding Nemo champion.
Okay.
I feel like that's a pretty good pick. Finding Nemo's
I feel like Pixar, there's really no wrong answer, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really hard to go wrong here on a Pixar bracket. We have Lindsay picked Brave as her all-time favorite Pixar movie. That's a bold choice. That's my
a brave
least
choice.
favorite.
That's a brave choice.
I like what you did there. That's my least favorite Pixar movie.
See what I did there?
Meredith picked Soul. I like that pick. That's one of the very new ones. Soul was pretty good. I like that one. Another Soul. Eugene picked Soul. Let's see. We got Tiffany picked Wall-E. So there you go.
Hey.
We got Alyssa picked Inside Out, which I still haven't seen. We talked about that last time.
It's just like a downer.
Let's see. Nina picked Coco. I think that's the first Coco I've seen.
I had someone reach out to me actually that said Coco was their choice as well.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. So there's a couple for Coco.
Coco.
My fiance Taya picked A Bug's Life. She had A Bug's Life versus Monsters Inc. in the finals with A Bug's Life winning, which I think was very close to kind of what I had, but good pick. You can't go wrong with The Bug's Life.
No.
Bug's Life
It's one of
is-
my
is
favorites.
fucking great. Hannah picked Up. So there you go.
Another
Similar
good
to our
one.
buddy Brandon. Let's see. Christina picked Brave. Another pick for Brave.
Another
That
Braves
seems pretty
pick.
crazy. Let's see. We got a Monsters Inc. That actually might be mine. Mine might be in there somewhere. We got an Incredibles pick. Oddly enough, I think that's like the first Incredibles I've seen out of all the results that I've looked at.
I don't think.
Laura picked Cars. We have a pretty good disparity here in selections, actually. Liz has Monsters Inc. So there's another Monsters Inc. Another Brave. Kimberly picked Brave. So there's 3 Braves.
Brave literally might, when I run through the stats, might beat everything else.
Here's another Incredibles. Clarice picked Incredibles.
I'm kind of surprised I haven't seen a Toy Story.
Danielle picked Monsters Inc. So I've seen Monsters Inc. and
Monsters,
Incredibles
yep.
come up multiple times. Here's another Incredibles.
Because
Alyssa
didn't you
picked
pick Monsters,
Incredibles.
Inc.?
I picked Monsters Inc., yeah.
And I had them lose to Wall-E.
Yeah. Emmett picked Finding Nemo, so there's the second Finding Nemo. Devin picked A Bug's Life, so there's another A Bug's Life. And Jane picked Coco. There's another Coco.
Wow,
So
Coco might.
Coco and
lead the
Brave
way.
are two of the. Those are surprising
Sleepers.
to me. Yeah, those are sleepers. I like, A Bug's Life, Finding Nemo, Monsters Inc., and The Incredibles. Those don't surprise me at all. But Brave and Coco really surprised me. Brave way more than Coco.
Yeah.
Brave, that was like my least favorite one I've seen so far. So for people to say like that's my favorite Pixar ever, I'm like, okay.
Well,
Interesting choice.
I mean, we have results. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, I'll work to get those put into a spreadsheet. And
Yeah, so thank you everyone for filling these
yes,
out.
thank
and
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you
Yeah.
do.
Thank you, Taya, for collecting all of these results for us. So
And we're not done yet. We'll go through
And we're
the
not done.
results at the end of our brackets just to see what champions they had. So I think without further ado, for those of you that do watch the stream or YouTube's whatever, we do have the bracket up on the screen. If you want to follow along, like I said, it is on our Podbean webpage under the brackets or under the links. Feel free to click on it and follow through with us. Again, just like Pixar, these are rated based on the IMDb rankings, so obviously one had the highest. And if any of them had the same ranking, which there were, I think, 4 or 5 that probably had the same, it was just whatever Google sorted it is
Yeah.
what we picked.
So that's how the seeds ended
So that's
up.
how the seeds. I was gonna put the ratings on there, but if you ever look at the bracket, it's impossible to read half of them because
Yeah.
it's just so long.
Yeah,
So-
some of these you got to kind of squint at because these Marvel movies have really long names. It'll be like Captain America : the First Avenger or
Yeah.
something, and it's like 5 words long, so
it's
that's kind of
hard.
hard to squeeze it in there. I would say another thing just to mention real quick before we work through this is this one had exactly 23 movies on it, similar to our Pixar movie podcast. Another thing to disclose, similar to the Pixar situation, at the time of us building these brackets, the newest Pixar movie, Luca, was not yet released, and then the newest MCU movie, Black Widow, is going to be released like this upcoming weekend. So at the point of building these brackets, there was exactly 23 movies of each.
Correct.
And we figured, all of these have been out for at least a couple of years. People have had a chance to go see them, including one that is literally brand new. Most people probably haven't had a chance to
Right.
see it, so there's no sense putting it on the bracket. So
And we already had a 23 bracket format because we just
there
did
you go.
it. So
that was honestly when we were going through this for the Pixar and the MCU, when we were doing that, that random kind of shooting the shit episode, and we were building all the the spreadsheets with the IMDb rankings and stuff, I was like, I didn't know actually that both of them had exactly 23 movies at the time.
Honestly, I knew Marvel was either 22 or 23, but Pixar was the one I was like, I feel like there's like 100 Pixar movies.
Doesn't it seem like there's way more than 23 Pixar movies?
I think it's because Pixar and DreamWorks kind of make movies that are very similar in look, so you can kind of, which we need to do a DreamWorks.
Oh boy, another bracket idea. I'm down.
We are going to change our name to Just Brackets.
It's literally this podcast is going to morph into the Just Brackets.
We'll do that later on because I know we've been doing like a lot of brackets recently.
Yeah. I think we have lots of ideas for brackets that, like you said, we can save for later. We'll cover. I think
brackets just the best way to discuss something and get other people to do it too, because then it opens it up to see like, oh, they didn't like this one at all.
Right. Well, and I think it's a lot easier, too, than just having this open-ended discussion of what's your favorite Pixar movie. Because then if someone, if we're asking people out there who they're not sitting down like us and have the whole list up in front of them, they're just going to go, oh, I don't know. I don't know all of them, but I really like Iron Man or whatever. And they're just going to pull something out of their head.
And I like that it makes you make hard decisions.
Right,
like our TV franchise thing, all of my favorite ones were in one section of the bracket. Yeah. So I had to make all hard decisions every round. And then the championship, I'm like, well, this was whatever one out of there was going to win for me. So
because like you said, it makes you come down to, if you were to go, Matt, what's like your top 5 favorite shows? You would go, okay, I have these 5 favorite shows. They're in no particular order or whatever. Like I have a lot of those, a lot of top 5s like that. Where I'm like, I can't rank them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but like the bracket goes, no, you have to rank them because then it comes down to what if 1 is against 4? Like are they really the same in your opinion, or is one number 1 and one's number 4? You're gonna have to make that decision,
So it's a strategic way for us to build conversation and limit conversation.
Yeah,
because then we don't go back and like revisit. Like, oh, they lost in the first round, but I want to say this. It's like, now you're done with them. So
like you had to make the decision, and that team didn't move on. So there you go. How do you want to start this?
So I think we're going to follow the same.
Start from like top left and
we're going to go top left. We're going to do the 16-17 matchup, which we have Iron Man 3 is 16 and Thor: The Dark World coming in at 17. Me personally, I took Iron Man 3. I actually liked Iron Man 3. I thought that was a good movie.
Interesting.
I wasn't the biggest fan of Thor: The Dark World. I don't know why. It just didn't really hit me. Whereas Iron Man 3, just for some reason, I liked that movie. Like it's one of the rewatchable ones for me.
Interesting. So I went the opposite way. I went Thor: The Dark World on this one.
So the fighting begins.
Well, and I like how I think we're probably going to have some parity here, maybe until the very end. But I think this matchup is a matchup between, in my opinion, and I think this is an opinion that a lot of people share, 2 of the weakest movies in the MCU, I think.
As they are shown in 16 and 17.
Right, yeah, and I think it makes sense because they were so low seeded, and they were seeded that way because of their low IMDb rankings. It's the 3rd entry in the Iron Man franchise. I think it's definitely the weakest out of the 3, and Thor: The Dark World is the 2nd in the Thor franchise, and I think that's definitely the weakest of the Thor franchise.
So you had the 2 weakest it's like their respective characters.
Yeah, exactly. It's like out of those 2 trilogies, I think you're talking about 2 of the weakest movies out of those trilogies, and I think I just enjoyed Thor: The Dark World more. I've seen Iron Man 3 more just because it's on TV a lot.
It's on TV a lot more.
But it's definitely not my favorite Iron Man. I like the first 2 a lot more. So
interesting. I'll get to Iron Man 2 when we get to that side of the bracket, but Iron Man's definitely my favorite of the 3, original one, but Iron Man 3's, it's there.
Okay.
Moving on to our next matchup in the first round. Again, these brackets are weird just because of it being 23, so there's a lot of buys. We're going to go to the 13 and the 20 seed, which for 13 we have Spider-Man: Far From Home against Ant-Man and the Wasp. I think we probably have the same one here. I went with Spider-Man, Far From Home. Ant-Man and the Wasp was good. It's just not one of those, like, super captivating characters that you really buy into, and you're like, oh, I can really get into his movies, and her, because they haven't come out with the Wasp movie yet.
No, they do have a planned 3rd movie in this Ant-Man series. It's like called Quantum Mania or something. It's like Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantum Mania.
I will say, like, and we'll get to it. But, we'll talk about it when we get to the movie. But yeah, I went with Spider-Man. I think
I did too.
I like the new Spider-Man. I will say I'm a big Tobey Maguire fan. I think his Spider-Mans are by far the best.
Yeah,
and they're the most OG for at least our generation.
Yeah.
But Holland does a great job.
I think he's great.
He's a great Spider-Man
and
character.
I think finally getting Spider-Man in the MCU is exactly what needed to happen.
Talk about a headache, though. Thanks a lot, Sony, but talk about a damn headache.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Far From Home. I think it's probably, if not as good, maybe even better than that first Spider-Man Homecoming they made.
Speaking of that, our 12 and 21, we have Spider-Man Homecoming against, I can't even read this, it printed out so small.
I think
Captain
that one's
America,
the first Avenger. Yeah, so the first Captain America movie.
Well,
so what'd you have
I went
here?
with Spider-Man Homecoming.
I did too.
I liked that movie a lot. It was one that really stuck with me, and it's just a good movie. It shows the innocence of the MCU, but then it also shows like the vulnerabilities of it. You have a high schooler that has to fight, his demon, which we all know becomes the villains and shit, and I think it's good. I like the storyline.
I think the Spider-Man character from the comics, like any Spider-Man movies, are really fortunate because they benefit from Spider-Man from the comics having the best cast of villains. Like Spider-Man has the best villains, and in Spider-Man Homecoming, Vulture is a tremendous villain. I'm a big fan of that character in that movie.
And you can kind of tell they tried to do they try and mimic the Green Goblin.
A little bit, yeah. He's very similar to the Green Goblin.
Similar type character.
But it's cool. You have some sympathy for the Vulture guy because he's just kind of like a working man,
trying to provide
works
for
construction,
his family.
trying to provide for his family, and he just keeps getting screwed over and screwed over and screwed over. And he's looking at like a guy like Tony Stark, going like, "How is this guy? Everyone celebrates him, and he's a billionaire, but yet I'm trying to do kind of the same thing, and then I'm this. Everyone shits on me for it. Like that's not fair. So he's like, fuck this. I'm gonna start stealing." Alien technology from the Avengers and selling them on the black market and making money. Like,
which he did.
You can kind of understand where he's coming from, which makes him like a compelling villain. And it's kind of cool to see Michael Keaton playing that character too.
He plays it really well.
Yeah, because he's, Batman from back in the day. And so he's kind of doing the opposite side now where he's not playing the hero. He's just playing a villain in someone else's superhero
He switched to the better universe.
Yeah. I think he's, he's not, spoiler alert for anyone who's not seen Spider-Man Homecoming, but he's not dead at the end of the movie.
No.
So they can bring Vulture back, which I think they probably will at some point for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to fight.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah. I like that movie a lot.
Or he'll come back and they'll be allies like...
Yeah, maybe.
I can't even think of his name right now. The James Franco character. The Goblin's son. Was it James Franco? Yeah, that's James Franco, right?
You're talking about from the original trilogy.
Yeah, from the original. When he came back and then he started to help Peter in
because he's the Green Goblin's son,
or the Black Spider-Man, or whatever that's called, since it's not, I guess, Venom. And why can't I think of his name? I'm looking it up.
Hang on, it's gonna bother me.
Oh, wait, no, that's MCU.
Hang on, okay.
I just love when you get a thought and you're like, yeah,
you're like,
never mind.
Okay, he's Harry Osborn. That's
okay.
right.
He comes back and he helps Peter Parker.
Yeah, he does.
So maybe, you never know. I kind of hope they don't, or I'm going to call them Star Wars for just copying what's already been done.
Okay, so that was it for the left side. Do you want to do the 8-9 matchup? Oh, no, that's second round.
That's second round. We'll do we'll do 15-18, which is Ant-Man and Iron Man 2. I had Ant-Man moving on because...
you did.
And I was going to say this when I was talking about Iron Man 3. Iron Man 2 is my least favorite Iron Man. I do not like Iron Man 2.
Really? What do you not like about it? I'm curious.
I don't know. I just don't like it. It's just like a weird... It's just weird to me. I don't like the movie.
See, that's how I feel about Iron Man 3. The villains in Iron Man 3, or I guess the main villain in Iron Man 3 just is... It seems a little... Most of the time, the MCU villains are clearly comic booky, but they make them somewhat grounded in reality.
His was way too scientific.
In that one in Iron Man 3, it seemed way too comic booky and cheesy to me. I don't know what it was. And whereas like in Iron Man 2, it's kind of like the Russian Tony Stark, who just builds these cool whips using the arc technology that he uses in his suit and all that kind of stuff, and he's just trying to take down Iron Man. You have this whole history of Ivan Vanko's dad and Tony's dad, Howard, and like Howard fucked him over back in the day or whatever. So he's like this.
I just didn't like it.
I thoroughly enjoy that.
I also liked Ant-Man.
I think the first Iron Man is my favorite, then the second
Yeah.
one, then the third one. That's kind of how
I
it
would
goes
go
for me.
1, 3, 2 for me.
Okay, so yeah, we're kind of just flipped on 2 and 3.
Yeah, but Ant-Man, I really liked Ant-Man. That
Ant-Man's cool, but I just don't think it's nearly as good of a movie as Iron Man 2.
it's because you don't like funny Marvel movies.
No, I do. Like, I
You have
enjoy
a bad
Ant-Man.
taste in movies,
The
as
thing-
we've seen through all of our movie topics.
How dare you? How dare
You
you?
have bad taste in movies.
I think the thing with the Ant-Man movies, I feel a little bad because, as we can tell, because we just covered this on the left side of the bracket like 2 minutes ago, I didn't pick Ant-Man and the Wasp to win its first round matchup, and I'm not picking Ant-Man to win its first round matchup. I like the Ant-Man movies. I just think out of the entire MCU, they're like 2 of the last ones I would go to for a rewatch. I don't know why.
Probably because they don't have that large of an impact. Well,
I think the stakes are just so much lower in those movies.
They don't have that large of an impact as far as the characters go, but the technology in Ant-Man is the only thing that allows that. It's the only thing that allows Endgame to be a movie.
Yeah, I think Ant-Man is super charming and a really great
He's a good
supplemental character in Avengers Endgame. I just am not really particularly interested in seeing an entire movie about Ant-Man all the time. That's just kind of where I stand with it. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Paul Rudd kills it though as Ant-Man. That's a perfect
role for him.
He's perfectly casted. So
you went with Iron Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
Loser.
So the next one is the number 10 seed Doctor Strange versus the number 23 seed. So the very last seed, Captain Marvel. I had Doctor Strange winning this matchup.
I had Doctor Strange as well. Those are the only 2 that I haven't seen.
Oh, okay. So you just kind of made a random selection or what?
We have Captain America, the first Avenger, right?
Yeah.
So why would we name, a new character Captain Marvel? Like, to me, I just feel they did it wrong.
Okay.
I feel like her character could have been... her character is it's pretty much Superman. It's Superwoman.
Right.
But I feel like Captain Marvel, to me, just is like, let's be real. Tony Stark should be called Captain Marvel.
I kind of see what you're saying.
He's
because it's kind of like the moniker saved for like the face of Marvel.
Right, and I don't think she's really the face of Marvel coming in when she did and then not having as big of a role as most people might think she would.
Yeah.
I think she plays her character well, and I think it's an important character, but I just feel like the naming wasn't right, and I kind of feel like the storyline is a little... I feel like they kind of botched it a little bit.
Okay. I picked Doctor Strange because I think Captain Marvel is a perfectly adequate movie, and it's entertaining. I have watched it again once or twice since it came out in theaters. I just don't think I'm that excited about that character. And like you said, it's almost like the MCU's version of Superman. She's kind of like Superwoman.
Right.
And I've always felt like even though Superman's kind of a captivating character, it's kind of bullshit that he exists in the comics. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, so he's basically God.
Right.
No one can kill him.
He has one thing that can kill him, and it's
pretty ridiculous to me. Like everyone else, all other heroes and villains in both DC and Marvel have vulnerabilities. That's what makes it so captivating, because you're like, I don't know if they're going to win this fight. You know what I mean? Like, they might get killed. Superman, it's like, he's just going to murder everyone. It's not even close. And Captain Marvel kind of feels like she's not quite that powerful.
I don't know what her weakness is, though.
Yeah, it's not that much beneath
they
him.
show her flying through space.
She can basically just single-handedly take out giant spaceships.
Yeah.
Like giant missiles that are shot from advanced alien spacecraft have no effect on her.
Right. So it's one of those.
It's like, okay,
couldn't you just have beat Thanos by yourself?
Yeah,
then?
that's kind of what it seems like, right? Like, wouldn't it just be a one-on-one her versus Thanos, and she would kind of be, it'd be relatively even. Even him with all of the Infinity Stones, like, had a lot of trouble fighting her off.
To jump ship to the DC universe, it's kind of like Batman versus Superman. It's like how you have a billionaire versus an alien god. Like,
right.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
How you could even make a movie out of this, and somehow you still tried.
Yeah.
So again, I think her character is great, but I feel like there needed to be more of a storyline.
Like I said, I don't hate Captain Marvel. I think it's a perfectly adequate movie, but I just don't think it's better than Doctor Strange. I think Doctor Strange is better.
I think,
and I'm not even really like a particularly big Doctor Strange fan. I just think
Doctor Strange 2 is coming out.
I like Benedict Cumberbatch a lot. I think he's a great actor, and I think
he's
the
good
whole
for that role too.
It's kind of cool them bringing in the whole like mysticism aspect, like Eastern mysticism into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because everything else prior to now has been like alien technology or like super advanced, human technology developed by people like Hank Pym and Tony Stark.
Right.
Whereas like now they're bringing in like, oh, okay, this is like actual magic. You know what I mean? Which I think is pretty cool.
In magic?
And plus, it's kind of cool to be introduced to, especially for, I don't know how a lot of other people felt when this movie came out, but I had little to zero exposure to Doctor Strange, the character, and his whole side of things. But it's kind of cool to know, like, oh, so there's this whole team, the Avengers, that are like defending humanity from, alien threats from space, and then super powered bad guys and all this kind of stuff. And then there's also Doctor Strange and his team of mystics that are protecting like our actual reality from like interdimensional threats. You know what I mean? Like by using magic. Like that's pretty fucking crazy. So
we could use Doctor Strange in our quantum physics discussion.
Ooh, we definitely could. By the way, I think real quick while we're on the Doctor Strange topic, I think the sequel, it's called Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, is the title for the sequel.
He loses his mind.
I think that movie is going to be fucking nuts. Because the first movie is nuts. It's like watching Inception, kind of, in some of those scenes where they're like bending the buildings and all this kind of stuff.
It is definitely the most mind-boggling.
It's a mind-bending, especially visually. You're like, whoa, what am I watching? So I think this next one is going to be even crazier, which I'm pretty excited for. So I had Doctor Strange moving on.
I had Doctor Strange moving on as well.
Okay.
Moving on to our 14 versus our 19, we have Avengers Age of Ultron against Thor. I had Thor winning.
Did you?
See,
Avengers I had Age of
Ultron is my least favorite Avengers.
It's mine as well. It's my least
really
favorite Avengers.
Enjoy Thor.
Thor 1 is solid. I just think after seeing Thor Ragnarok, I definitely ride for that one way harder. And I think Avengers Age of Ultron, I would rather watch a big team-up Avengers movie, even if it is my least favorite Avengers, than the original Thor. In terms of rewatchability and entertainment factor, I'd rather rewatch Age of Ultron.
Shame.
And I'm a big like artificial intelligence kind of guy.
Shame.
Like anytime you have artificial intelligence and
Shame.
robots reaching sentience in a movie, sign me up. I'm in.
Shame.
Did you just watch that episode of Game of Thrones?
Yeah, so it was on a little bit earlier before you got here. All right, so we have yet another discrepancy. All right. Well, moving on to our final first round matchup, we have Black Panther coming in at the 11th seed against the Incredible Hulk at 22. This one was very easy for me with Black Panther.
I also had Black Panther.
The Incredible Hulk, in my opinion, is probably one of the worst. I feel like they never got it right, and then they haven't made a new one since.
It really bums me out that we haven't gotten a solo Hulk movie done with Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, he deserves it.
Yeah, I don't know why we haven't gotten
one.
that yet. Yeah, because it feels like Marvel could really fucking kill one of those. They just haven't. Because you still haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, right?
Right. That and then the Doctor Strange and Captain Marvel are the only two I haven't seen.
He's a big part of Thor Ragnarok. It's kind of like a Thor and Hulk buddy team-up movie. And it makes you realize like how much you love watching Mark Ruffalo's version of the Hulk in this iteration of the Hulk as compared to the Incredible Hulk version. And it's like, why don't we have a solo Hulk movie? That would be so fucking cool. And they just haven't given it to us
I'm
yet.
sure there's probably something in the works. You've got to
I
think
hope so.
there would
I
be.
hope so. That's like one of the ones, like so far, if I had any complaint or if I was like, give me a solo movie for any of these characters that we haven't gotten yet, it would definitely be Hulk. Because he's really the only one. I mean, now we're having shit. We have a Black Widow movie coming out. It's like, if Black Widow gets her own movie, why can't Hulk get his own movie? He's a more influential part of the Avengers than Black Widow is.
Because he already has a movie. It's just not with the Hulk that we like.
Right. Which is one of the things that seems kind of weird. It's like they can always say, oh, we have done a solo Hulk movie. And you're like, yeah, but it was with a totally different actor, and the Hulk looks
and it was
entirely
like 2005 or whatever.
Yeah. It's like, it's not the same. Make one with Mark Ruffalo where it looks like the Hulk that we're used to in all of the Avengers movies and Thor Ragnarok. You know what I mean?
One day.
So I had Black Panther
as well.
beating that one.
All right. So we have a decent discrepancies
Yeah,
here.
we have some disparity for sure.
All right, well, let's jump into the second round with the number 1 overall seed, Avengers Infinity War. And I had Iron Man 3, but I think we're both going to have the same answer on this one. I had Infinity War moving on very easily in this round.
Yeah, so
and I'll discuss about Infinity War, I think, later in the rounds when we need to discuss.
I was going to say, I think it's safe to say that one's probably moving on in both of our brackets, so we'll save some of our larger discussion on that for later. But mine was Infinity War versus Thor: The Dark World rather than Iron Man 3, and I had Infinity War pretty easily moving on in that matchup. So
yeah, no matter what it was matched up against, it was going to win.
It was going to, I mean, that type of movie is going to steamroll its first opponent.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not even close.
So then we had Captain America Civil War against Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Well, I went with Guardians Volume 2. Guardians.
Oh, you did. Okay.
As we'll come to find out later on, but Guardians is high up on my list.
Yeah.
I love the cast that they have.
Me too. The Guardians movies are a lot of fun.
Like I think we've discussed it multiple times. The MCU does a good job of keeping their movies, most of their movies pretty light and, fun, but having that serious storytelling.
Yeah.
Whereas Guardians it has it all. Like it's funny. It's
action packed.
It's action packed. Good stories.
Yeah. It's emotional.
It's emotional,
yeah.
and it's not. Most things of Marvel Universe are, of course, there's villains and like Thor's out of the world, but a lot of it happens on Earth.
Yeah.
A lot of it's based. No.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy is just
space,
in the galaxy.
And it was like you said. The first Guardians was kind of our introduction to the cosmic universe in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like prior to that, there hadn't really been too much other than Thor. Hadn't really been too much outside of Earth. But you really go to like a couple
planets with Thor, and you don't know that the rest of the galaxy really exists.
Yeah.
So I went with Guardians Volume 2. I love that movie. It's not as good as the first one, but it's such a good movie. I could watch Guardians over and over again, and I am so excited that there's a third one.
Me too. And apparently Thor's going to be like pretty big part of the third
because
Guardians
at the end of Endgame, he goes off with them.
Yeah. I picked Captain America Civil War in this matchup. I think it's a really good Captain America movie. It's not my favorite out of the Captain America trilogy, but it's really good. And it's basically like Avengers 2.5.
Right.
Like there's so many characters in that movie. It's basically like an Avengers movie. And I think the stakes are just so high in that movie and so much crazy, impactful shit happens. And plus that whole airport fight scene is just amazing between all of the Avengers. And it forces you as like an MCU fan to be like, well, whose side am I on here? Do I want to side with Iron Man? Do I want to side with Captain America?
But deep down you go, they're on the same side.
Yeah. So I went with Captain America Civil War. I like Guardians too, but not more than Captain America Civil War.
And that was the 8-9 matchup as they both had buys for the first round. Right. So you can't go wrong. They're definitely, top half of the pack.
Yeah, pretty evenly matched there, I think.
Now we got the 4-seed Avengers versus, I think for both of us, we had Spider-Man Far From Home.
Yeah, we did.
I went with Avengers.
So did I.
Just that first movie where they bring such big characters together, definitely,
they hit a home run.
They hit a home run with it, and they set the stage, and the bar so high that you're like, okay, if this is what you're going to do for the first one, what are you going to do?
Right.
So I went with the Avengers over Spider-Man's a great movie. Nothing against that one, but
I don't think Spider-Man Far From Home really stood a chance for me in this matchup. I think the original of Avengers, I had to legitimately, as it moved on in the bracket, think really hard about picking this over some other movies. I am a giant fan of the original Avengers.
Really sets the stage.
It's excellent. And the way they if you go back and rewatch it today, because at least for me, I don't know how you feel, a lot of the ones that I go back and rewatch are Infinity War and Endgame, and like a lot of the newer ones that have been released, like Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok and those ones. So you kind of like forget about how good the original Avengers movie was, but if you go back and rewatch it, it is so compelling. And Loki makes an amazing villain.
He does.
in that first movie. Amazing.
And they're coming out with the Loki show, or is it already out?
It's already out. They're on like episode 4 or something coming out. It's good. You should check it out. It's really good. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
The next matchup, I had Spider-Man Homecoming versus the 5 seed Thor Ragnarok that had a bye in the first round. Is that the same for you?
Yep.
Okay, I had Thor Ragnarok winning this matchup, so both Spider-Man movies get knocked out in the second round. Thor Ragnarok, I think, is just... I've already talked about it multiple times on this podcast, but it is hands down the best Thor movie out of that trilogy, and I think it's arguably like top 5 of MCU movies.
Really?
It's incredible.
It being the 5th seed has it as a top 5?
Yeah.
Shocker.
Imagine that.
Weird.
Imagine that. So IMDb tends to agree with me, I guess.
I have not seen Thor Ragnarok.
You got to get on that shit, man. You got to see it.
I went with Spider-Man Homecoming.
Ooh.
And
okay.
I probably would have gone with Spider-Man Homecoming anyways.
I
like Thor's character, and I understand that the movie might be like, balls to the wall, but
let me just say this. I'm with you. I love the Spider-Man movies, but without having seen the Thor Ragnarok, you really don't know what you're getting into because it is so wildly different than the first 2 movies. Like, it is wildly different, and in a good way. It is like really batshit crazy, like super weird, but in a really good way, and it's funny as hell. If you like funny Marvel movies, Thor Ragnarok is for you. Like, you're gonna love it.
Well, I'll watch it at some point, but
you have to watch it.
Until that
man.
point,
it's so good.
Spider-Man Homecoming. Moving on.
Okay. Watch that before you watch Doctor Strange or Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
or maybe save it for last and save the best for last.
That would be on my list.
I don't know how you want to do it, but
one day I'll go back and I'll just watch them all in order.
Yeah, there you go. It's going to take you a while, but
6 months. Yeah. Actually, it probably won't take me that long. Let's be real.
Probably not. Yeah, considering you're already on season 6 of Game of Thrones again. So we're second round of the top right.
Second round,
right?
moving on to the top right, where we introduce our number 2 seed.
Yeah, number 2 seed of Avengers Endgame versus, for me, it was Iron Man 2. I think for you, it's Ant-Man, right? This is Endgame wins this one. Yep. It's not even close. I mean, I like Iron Man 2, but yeah, this is just... It's
like Infinity War. We can discuss it,
Yeah, I was going to say. I have lots of thoughts on Endgame, so yeah.
But yeah, I had Endgame beating Ant-Man as well and moving on. So, but then we both had Doctor Strange against the 7 seed, which again, Captain America, the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, the second Captain America.
I had Winter Soldier beating Doctor Strange.
I did as well.
I like Winter Soldier. That's a good...
I'm a huge fan of Winter Soldier.
That's a good one.
I think it's like... It's legitimately... So we don't own too many of the Marvel movies. I think we own Infinity War, Endgame.
Do you own
Winter Soldier
Disney Plus?
I do, yeah.
So you own...
Well, I mean, we're kind of renting them if you consider it that. Because if I stop paying month to month, then I no longer have access to the movies. But... in terms of like owning them on Blu-ray, I do have a handful, and one of them is the Winter Soldier, and I ride for the Winter Soldier so hard. That movie's fucking dope.
It is.
I think it's a gigantic improvement on the first Captain America.
Agreed.
I think it's probably equally as good as Civil War, if not better, in my opinion. It's like one of the best action political thriller type movies that the MCU has ever done.
It has everything.
Like, it's the action in that movie is so good, and the Winter Soldier character is so compelling in that movie, and obviously I won't really go into it for anyone who hasn't seen it. I could get the spoiler alert and just plow ahead, but
screw your spoiler alerts. This movie's been out for like 10 years.
It has been out since like 2014, I think. So yeah, you've had a chance to watch it, but like finding out like that emotional beat where you find out the Winter Soldier is, spoiler alert, Bucky from the first movie, like Steve's friends going back to the 30s. Is just crazy. And he's got this metal arm, and he's basically like a Russian spy, like super assassin. Dude.
He's Russia's version of Captain America.
Yeah, and the action scenes and the fight scenes in that movie, like when he first like really attacks Captain America and Natasha, Black Widow, when they're trying to get that one S.H.I.E.L.D. agent like out of there to interrogate him or whatever, and he attacks them on the highway, and he like punches through the windshield and rips the steering wheel off that car, and then everything that happens from there on out where he's like battling them in the street is fucking crazy.
Dude, they do it well.
And the knife fight that he has with Captain America is just so good, and then when Captain America lifts up the shield and he punches the shield with his metal arm, like, dude, the action in that movie is incredible. Like, I am a huge fan of the Winter Soldier.
Well, it easily beats Doctor Strange.
Yeah, I think just in terms of entertainment value, it's a lot better than Doctor Strange. And I think
Doctor Strange has like you said, it's like an Inception. It's got a very unique and cool idea, but it's one of those. It's like I just don't know how much as far as a Marvel superhero movie I can get into of something like this.
Yeah.
It's not like an action-packed superhero movie. It's more of a storytelling.
Yeah.
You know,
Which I like. I mean, I like the movie, but compared to The Winter Soldier, it's not even close.
not even close. Well, moving on to the number 3 seed, Guardians of the Galaxy, against, for me, I had Thor, and I believe you had Age of Ultron.
Yep.
This one's extremely easy for me. I had Guardians moving on.
I did as well. So I had
Swiftly.
it beating Age of Ultron, which is saying a lot for Guardians because it's the first entry in a series of brand new characters, super weird characters, beating an Avengers team-up movie, which says a lot about how much I like the original Guardians. I think the original Guardians is one of the best movies they've made, hands down.
I think so.
It's so good.
The way I looked at the Guardians just in general, I'm like, that is the Galaxy's version of the Avengers.
Right, yeah.
It's a team that becomes assembled through, crazy random shit that all of what they do has a big impact on the Avengers and the MCU universe. So, hands down, Guardians is easily beating Thor.
Yeah.
And other movies.
And it beat Age of Ultron for me. So, Guardians is moving on. Guardians 1 is an excellent movie. Moving on, I think we both had Black Panther, right? So, the 11 seed versus the 6 seed of Iron Man that had a first round bye. I had Iron Man winning.
I had Iron Man moving on as well. Like I said when we were discussing, I think, Iron Man 3, the original Iron Man is, he's the face of Marvel, let's be real.
He really is, yeah.
And Robert Downey Jr. plays that.
Just kills it.
He kills that role. It's his best role ever.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's iconic. It's...
Like
that
it's so iconic that when you see him now, you just think of Iron Man.
Yeah,
he is Iron Man.
And he literally wanted himself to be killed off because he didn't want to play Iron Man anymore because of that.
Yeah.
But I'm like, dude, that's like the role.
It's the career defining role.
Right.
For him.
Like he was a big name going into this, but then he took that and he's perfect for it.
He's perfect.
He's a snarky billionaire playboy that, gets what he wants, but he's a genius.
Yeah. And also is willing to sacrifice
and
for
is willing
his
to
teammates
sacrifice
and stuff,
for his teammates, for his, family as you get to later movies, and it's just great. I love that original.
I agree.
Man.
We can't really say anything here that hasn't already been said about the original Iron Man. It's amazing.
Well, and the whole story of how he got the shrapnel in his heart, and then how he realized that Stark Industries was selling weapons to terrorists and foreign militias that were terrorist groups, and he had help from a scientist, and then the whole story of the beginning was just
amazing.
Great.
Well, and if you read about the history, or if you watch interviews about the history of the making of that first Iron Man, there was a lot riding on the success of that first movie, and if that first movie did not turn out to be the smash hit that it was, we would not have the MCU as it exists today.
Because he opened the floodgates for them to introduce every single character in their own
and it was the first time that we've ever really gotten, it wasn't just, oh, hey, we're going to make some Iron Man movies, and then over here they're going to make some Hulk movies, and then they're going to make some Black Widow movies.
They were all like,
it's like, no, this is a
together.
cinematic universe. Yep. All these characters exist in the same universe, the same way they do in the comics. And for you comic fans, you guys have been used to seeing them all team up in comics and do these crossover events. Well, now you're going to get to see it on screen. And that's the first time that had ever been done.
Yep.
And they've absolutely knocked it out of the park.
The first Iron Man is just phenomenal.
It's so great.
I won't say it's the best because I don't have it winning, but
it's up there though.
It's up there.
Yeah. I mean, a 6 seed is I think worthy, for that movie.
Yeah, definitely.
6 out of 23, that seems about right. Okay, so where are we at? We're
jumping back over to, we are in the quarterfinals, and I believe we have
a little bit different.
We have a little bit different. We both have Infinity War,
right?
And then I have Guardians, and you have
Captain America: Civil War. Yeah.
It's tough for me to go against Guardians, but Infinity War was really the first movie that just you look at and you go, all right, the budget for this movie had to be like $500 million.
I think it literally was I think they shot Infinity War and Endgame kind of back to back, and I think the total combined like
I was probably like $750
budget
billion
was like literally $500 million.
I mean, you look at the cast in there and you go, all right, let's see how they can put all of them together.
How are they going to do this?
You've seen pieces with the Avengers. You know, they add pieces.
Yeah.
But Infinity War was the first time they were just like, whoa, here's everybody. And they did not miss a fucking beat.
They nailed it. And plus, it's the first time you really get Thanos being directly involved.
Right.
Because prior to that, you just got these little after credit scenes, you get these little teasers.
Yeah.
You know he's kind of behind the scenes pulling the strings, but you haven't ever really seen him get his hands dirty. And now it's like, oh fuck, like he's here and he's getting involved in the fight. I had Infinity War beating Captain America: Civil War. I just think it's the #1 overall seed for a reason. I'll save a little bit more of my thoughts.
I think it truly is probably the most iconic.
Yeah.
It's well, okay, maybe Endgame does, but it's got some of the best fighting scenes in the Marvel universe.
I'll save a little bit more of my thoughts as we go on because it advances here to the final four. But yeah, I have it beating Captain America: Civil War.
Well, at least we have one of the final four is the same.
Yep.
I definitely know that the next one will not be the same.
Okay. So what's the matchup here?
For me, I have Avengers versus Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Okay, and I had Avengers versus Thor: Ragnarok.
And I have Spider-Man: Homecoming moving on to my final four.
What?
Dude, I love that movie. I love Spider-Man. I've probably watched it 10 plus times. It might be one of my most watched Marvel movies.
See, I've seen both of the Spider-Man movies a couple times each, and I like both of them a lot, but that's crazy. It's in your final four?
It's in my final four.
Woo! Okay, so
in ink on paper.
I had the Avengers versus Thor: Ragnarok, and I really had to think about this one because I'm a gigantic fan of both of these movies. I had the original Avengers beating Thor: Ragnarok. Like I said, I already touched on it a little bit, but the original Avengers I think is slept on and a little bit overshadowed by Infinity War and Endgame. It is a phenomenal movie. It's tremendous.
Taya, that was
so
Zach that said good. Phenomenal.
You don't. There's only so many like adjectives to describe these things. So,
I mean. Like I said, there's no disses really to any of these movies. It's kind of like Pixar. There's not a lot of these that you could really be like, if you pick like Iron Man 3, I kind of got to question you.
Yeah.
But most of these, it's one of those, it's like it becomes preference. And I just really enjoy Spider-Man: Homecoming. I think it's just, it just is like I love Spider-Man. I don't know. I can't really like put it into words of why I chose it. I just don't like the original Avengers as much in terms of like watchability factor of, I'll sit down and I'll watch Homecoming, but I don't really care to watch the Avengers.
All right, interesting. Okay, so that's that. We have half of the final four set. So mine is Infinity War versus the original Avengers on that side. And
I have Infinity War versus Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Wow. All right.
Wow.
So going back to the top right, I believe we both had Endgame advancing.
And Winter Soldier.
And Captain America: The Winter Soldier. So all of the gushing I did about Captain America: The Winter Soldier,
done.
I would love for it to advance, but it just ran up against a buzzsaw in Avengers Endgame. Avengers Endgame is going to win this matchup.
It will win the matchup as well for me. I will discuss it more next round than this round, just because of other reasons. But yeah. Endgame.
It's great.
Easily was moving on.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, I think we both had Guardians moving on, right? And then I think we both had Iron Man, didn't we?
So that side of the bracket, besides a couple different things.
Yeah, we're kind of on point over here. So I actually had Guardians of the Galaxy, the original, moving on here.
As did I.
Nice.
As did I.
Nice. So Guardians won, making it all the way to the final four in both brackets.
As much as I like the original Iron Man, Guardians will beat it out.
It's so good, 100
times.
I was blown away by that movie when I first saw it. And that's another one that we own. So I think it's that one, Winter Soldier, and then we own Infinity War and Endgame. I think those are the ones we actually have.
Yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy.
So good, dude. It's so good.
They don't go wrong with anything. And the cast, every single cast member they have for that is the perfect fit.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone else that you could put together to fit those roles than who they cast.
And Chris Pratt is just killing it as Star-Lord.
He kills it as Star-Lord. It's McConaughey that does... I can't even think of the name right now.
McConaughey does not.
I thought McConaughey was in
Guardians.
fucking Guardians.
Who did you think he played? Who are you trying to? Which
Rocket.
character? No, that's Bradley Cooper.
Bradley Cooper. Okay,
Yeah.
I knew it was one of those two dickheads. I don't know why I thought McConaughey. I did watch Free State of Jones not that long ago,
okay, so
that
he's
is
just on the
probably on
brain.
my mind, yeah.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper voices Rocket
so he does
Raccoon, and then
Rocket.
Vin Diesel does Groot, which is kind of funny because all he does is just
I
ever
am
say, I am
Groot.
Groot, so pretty easy work for...
Making millions to say I
yeah,
am
for
Groot.
Vin Diesel.
And then Dave Bautista is...
Dave Bautista's great
He's
as Drax.
fucking,
And then, of course, Zoe Saldana is just amazing
Yep.
as Gamora. She's amazing in everything she's in, so... yeah, Guardians won
moving on.
in the Final Four.
So we have 3 of the same
yeah.
in the Final Four.
So, okay, so my Final Four is Infinity War versus the original Avengers, and then we have Endgame versus Guardians of the Galaxy.
And I have Infinity War versus Spider-Man Homecoming and Endgame versus Guardians.
Okay, so I will go first. On the left side, I have Infinity War beating the original Avengers. This was a very tough matchup for me, but Infinity War advances.
And I have Infinity War beating Spider-Man Homecoming. So
Okay.
the upset of the 12 seed trying to break brackets ends to the number 1
Ends in
seed.
the Final
Infinity
Four.
War.
It was a good
Dude,
run.
Infinity War's just Infinity War, Endgame, and Guardians for me are just I could rewatch all of those and just be like, yeah, I don't care.
Never get bored.
Any of
Yeah.
the other 20 movies.
Yeah.
Just let me watch these 3,
Yeah.
and I'll get the whole story I need to.
Yeah.
They're just too good.
So, okay, we both have Infinity War
We
advancing
both
to the
have Infinity
finals.
War.
So the other side of the bracket for me is Avengers Endgame versus the original Guardians. As much as I just gushed about Guardians, I love Guardians, but Endgame beats it here. So
Shame.
So my finals matchup is Infinity War versus Endgame.
And my final matchup is Infinity War versus Guardians.
No fucking way.
Yeah.
You just picked Guardians of the Galaxy over Avengers Endgame?
Fuck yeah, I did, and I'll do it all over again.
Explain yourself.
I
Explain yourself.
love Endgame, but I think there's too many loose holes to the movie. I think there's too many plot holes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we will go back to that once we cover our finals matchup because I have Endgame in my finals. So we'll dive into the rabbit hole.
Finals are wrong.
Okay, you have Guardians in your finals. That's fucking crazy.
I have Guardians beating Infinity War. There, I said it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is my champions.
That won your whole bracket?
That won my bracket.
It beat Endgame and Infinity War?
Because it's the best.
Dude.
The best.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a bombshell.
Guardians had the want factor, and they wanted this championship, so they took it.
I mean, I can't really say much. It was in my Final Four, but to beat both of those movies back to back in a Final Four and a championship round is fucking crazy.
Yeah, they had to dig deep into the gas tank, but they found it. They found it, and they took the championship home.
Okay. My finals matchup is Infinity War versus Endgame. I picked Avengers Endgame to win the whole bracket for me. It may seem like kind of a boring answer because Avengers Endgame is the kind of the capstone
answer
of the whole MCU, but I just think you can't really go wrong with Avengers Endgame. I mean, it tied the entire Infinity Saga, all 22 prior movies together, and they knocked it out of the park. It is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying Endgame or Infinity War is bad. For me, having Guardians beating Endgame, there's too many loose
Okay, so now that we know
storylines for me.
the final answers. So those are our final selections for our champions on our bracket. So, if you're listening to the podcast, we went over this a little bit at the beginning. Please check out our website at the Podbean website. Click on the bracket, fill it out, send us an email at our Gmail email address.
Comment on the Instagram post.
Comment
Facebook
on Instagram.
post.
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter. Let us know what you select. We will kind of tabulate the results. I have some results here as well. We can either go into it now or save it for later.
We'll go into it now, but we can discuss
Okay.
we can go into the loopholes of Endgame for me of why they lost to Guardians.
Do you want to do that after I read the other selections or before?
Let's do this before, and then we'll go through
Okay,
the other
okay.
selections.
So the ball is yours, sir.
Your Honor.
Yeah.
No, Endgame.
What,
okay.
what are your thoughts here on the plot?
So
holes of
Endgame is it's amazing, right? They're tasked with going back in time to get all of the Infinity Stones and
undoing
what Thanos did, right?
Right.
Thanos is this almighty character.
Yeah.
Army, massive army. Probably the world, the galaxy's largest, or I guess you could say the universe's largest army.
Yeah.
Of who fucking knows what. Everything that's not human. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the beginning of the movie, they just show him he gets beheaded by Thor in a peaceful, like, little cottage by himself.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. After he's wiped out half of the universe.
After he's wiped out half of the universe with a single snap.
Yeah.
Then he just gets his head cut off.
Okay.
So my first plot hole is like, well, wait a second. This dude that just killed half the universe with a single snap, killing half the Avengers, just gets beheaded because Thor was angry?
Well, yeah, he's in retirement, man. It's like Thanos in retirement. And he doesn't have the Infinity Stones. And he's like half burnt to shit. You know, like half of his body's all fucked up.
Because then he tried and destroy the gauntlet.
Yeah, well, they go there looking for the stones.
Right.
Because they're like, the same energy signature came from this planet that he used from Earth when he wiped out half of all life in the universe. And so they go to this planet thinking like they're going to get the stones back from him and undo it. And he's like, the stones aren't here. I destroyed them. I used the stones to destroy the stones.
Right.
So he doesn't have the Infinity Stones. He's like half beat to shit. He's basically like barely clinging to life. And you got Thor, who's like peak power Thor with Stormbreaker, with like basically Mjolnir hammer in axe form, and beheads him. So how? So what's your problem with that? I just don't understand.
Well, the first plot.
Did you not like how that was the way the movie started, or what?
I don't like how he was this almighty character that just goes down like that.
Well, like I said, because of all the reasons I just said. He's basically beat to shit. He's in retirement. He's done his job. Like, that was it. That was his whole sole purpose his entire life was, I'm going to get these stones. I'm going to wipe out half of all life. And he did it. So now he's like, he's chilling.
Right. He's chilling. But
he's
then
in retirement.
He just gets, wiped out. Just boom, gone. And you're like, wait, that's it? You kill half the universe and that's how you die.
He had nothing left that he needed to stick around for.
So what was the point of killing the whole universe?
He already said it. In the prior movies, his whole purpose of wiping out half of all life is because he's seen it time and time again where there's too many mouths to feed. There's not enough resources. We need to wipe out half of all life, start over, and then everyone, the half that survives is going to have a better life.
So then when the world or the universe got repopulated, who's going to snap their fingers again?
It's not his problem again. It's not his problem. It's someone else's problem.
Well, it was never his problem to begin with. He
didn't
have to worry about it.
Because, you find out his background on Titan, where the Iron Man and the Guardians, they all fight him on Titan. That was his home planet, and he's like, it all got fucked because there was not enough resources for the amount of people we had, and I told them we needed to resolve this population problem, and they didn't listen to me, and now look what happened. So that's
look what happened. Your head's rolling around on the floor.
That's his driving factor. I'm just telling you like where his motivation is.
Right. Okay, so that's one plot hole that I don't like.
How is it a plot hole?
There's a plot hole.
How is it a plot hole?
It starts the movie that way. Why would they start the movie that way?
He's just all powerful and then he dies.
Yeah, he's just all powerful. Like you go from Infinity War to then all of a sudden he gets his head cut off.
Plot holes are something that don't have explanations. That seems to have a pretty reasonable explanation to me.
Just because you picked Endgame.
No, just because
that's it. That's simply
it's a perfectly reasonable explanation. There are multiple perfectly reasonable explanations for why Thor was able to so easily kill Thanos after the snap.
Well, yeah, I mean,
is what I'm saying.
The guy just sits there and lets his head get cut off.
Moving on. What are the other plot holes that you don't like?
Captain America at the end. They go back and they, give all these stones
back. They go put him back in the timeline. They go put him back in time,
and then he doesn't come back to modern time, right?
Yeah.
And this we'll probably discuss this with quantum physics, but there's no real proof. But time traveling, you can't alter history, right? That's kind of like the number one thing of time traveling is you can't alter the history that's about to happen. Or, if you were to time travel and you were to go and buy the winning Powerball tickets, right? You're altering history and something bad's going to happen because you change something that has already happened.
Yeah, and I think in Endgame, they have that brief discussion where they're asking Professor Hulk about... Because, I don't know who suggests it, but they're like, why can't we just go back in time and kill baby Thanos?
Right.
And he has the whole joke of like, first of all, wow, that's fucked up.
Yeah, you can't go kill a baby.
And then he's like, second of all, the way he explains it, it sounds confusing, but it makes a lot of sense. He goes, you can't... If you travel back into the past to change your present, right?
Right.
By going to the past... that past now becomes your future. So by you going into the past, that past that you're now in is now your current future, not where you just left from. So you can't change that future by changing your now present. I'm kind of butchering it a little bit, but the way he explains it is like you can't change it's a separate timeline now. You can't change what happened already in this timeline by going back and changing something in the past, because now it's a new branch.
Right.
Kind of.
So Captain America goes back and delivers I can't remember what stone he delivered, but he
had to take them all back, right? He took all of them.
Right. But then he doesn't come back. He goes...
Right, he doesn't time travel back. He just stays in... Once he's done taking them all back, he stays in like the 1940s
or whatever.
with Peggy.
So him doing so makes all of Captain America invalid.
How so?
He changes history. He was frozen.
Right.
So all of Captain America's movies then become invalid. Everything Captain America did becomes invalid because he never got to that point in time. So everything Captain America, that we watched and that, he lived in modern time, when he goes running through New York City and he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Never happened. So he never gets woken up out of sleep because he never never gets frozen. I think this is one of those things, if you think about it too much, your head just kind of hurts. But I think the explanation is he's a different version of Captain America. So there's another version of him out there that is going to go through all of those events. But he, being from the future, is coming back, and he's like from another timeline, another branch. And he's going to live this life that he kind of got robbed of by being frozen for 80 years with Peggy. And then he kind of comes back to his original timeline, and that's where you see him at the end, where he's like this old man because he's lived this whole life. Right, but then if he's lived this whole life, how does he know where the Avengers are going to be? And why does he have this shield that was made by Tony Stark? Again, I think if you think about all this kind of stuff, you're just going to go around and around in circles. But that's one of those like loopholes. I sit there and I go, well, wait a second. That doesn't make sense as far as what they've tried to explain. There are probably perfectly reasonable explanations that the writers have out there if you feel free to do some digging into it. Because like I said, when I'm trying to explain this, I'm just working through it in my own head, trying to go through the logic of it. But when you start dealing with time travel in any movie, logic kind of goes out the window. It gets kind of fucked. Right, because we don't know time. Like in reality, we don't know what time travel would do. No one really understands the ramifications of time travel because it's not possible for us. Like human beings experience time in a linear fashion, and we can only go past, present, future. That's the order that everything always has to happen in. We can't go backwards. So we don't know how that would work. Like, and they've been making time travel movies for decades, and it's always handled differently. You know what I mean? Like, right. There's no. Sometimes you can't say there's a right answer. Sometimes you go back and it splits off a new branch, and now there's a new timeline. Sometimes you go back and you can actually change the timeline. There's a million variations on those two things too that can happen in all these time travel movies. But then I think if he can go back, right? Excuse me, and alter his personal history and his personal story, what would stop Pepper Potts from going back and altering Tony Stark's and making him not snap his fingers? Like there, it can lead to, it's like you said, when you start thinking about it, your brain just goes into all these other like places. But it's part of the story to me going, so there's a way Tony Stark comes back. So there's always a way. If they've introduced time travel, there's always a way that he can come back. Right. So like to me, it's that loophole of, it's a great story. I'm not, because you start to discredit the whole snap because you're like, oh, you snap and you get everything away. But at the end of it all, it does nothing. The only person that isn't there is Thanos, and then everyone that died in probably the greatest war scene of all the oh my god, movies. That ending battle is fucking so good. When he goes, Avengers Assemble, you just get like chills, like with the hammer and everything. He starts being able to use Mjolnir. I think you are raising some good points because a lot of the people who did have small issues with Endgame, because like I said, it's basically a perfect home run in terms of like a capstone on the Infinity Saga. But I think people's issues with it were the time travel aspect. Well, there were just some questions that got raised. Once you bring in time traveling, things get kind of screwy. And it's like that in Harry Potter as well. Like there's an interesting time travel thing in, I think, what is it, the third Harry Potter movie? Prisoner of Azkaban.
where if you really sat down and started to think about what's going on there, your brain starts to kind of hurt. Where
Right.
like Hermione's using all of this time traveling to make all of her classes and stuff, and it gets kind of, and it starts, and in that one, there's like this explanation of time where the time traveling has always happened because those characters saw their future selves in their past,
Right.
if that makes sense. So Harry was always destined to time travel back and help himself out.
Right, get hit in
And
the head
that
with those
always
rocks.
happened to his younger self. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's almost like this loop feature where he's always going to go forward. He's going to time travel back, help his prior self
and
out.
they
And
discuss
that's
it when
always
she-
how it's going to be.
Right, and they're discussing it when she turns the, I can't remember what it's
Yeah.
called, but like the necklace she has
Yeah.
on. They're discussing it then, and she goes, "We can't be seen because,
Right.
you know, I mean, to me that's a little different though because there are wizards and witches. It's a different universe, which we will do a podcast solely on Harry Potter, so I can talk for about 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying that's another example of like how
Right,
they've
it's a
used
different- it's a
time
different
travel. in
time
movie,
travel.
So I think it just starts to get there's these paradoxes that start to happen, and like I don't think the human brain is really, at least my human brain, because I'm not a fucking like physicist or anything, is just
Same.
not really able to fully comprehend the ramifications of all of that kind of stuff. You're like. And then, like,
Well, it's hard to.
movies like Looper or something. Have you ever
Right.
seen Looper? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, so to me, that makes a little bit more sense than like the Avengers Endgame style, because it's like, oh, okay, it's all just a loop from now on. If you use time travel, go back, wipe out your prior self, like in Looper.
Right.
That means that your prior self, by killing your future self, who has just time traveled back, your prior self is only going to live another 30 years until the moment where you time travel back to kill your past self again.
Right.
Or to have your past self kill your future self.
Right, so it's
it's now you're stuck in this loop, which
Right.
is why it's called Looper. It's always just going to be in this loop.
Right.
now,
So the idea of time travel from different movies is different, but as far as as far as it goes in the movie, I think one of my other questions was, I can't remember like the Doctor Strange people, whatever, I can't remember what they're called.
just the mystics or the
mystics,
wizards.
yeah. They all open up the portals,
Yeah.
which means they all knew the future. Which, as Doctor Strange said in Infinity War, he goes, "We win like 1 out of like
14,608,000 or whatever he said.
Right. He goes, "There's one way for us to win."
Yeah.
And I go, again, I haven't seen Doctor Strange, so I don't know like why he can't tell that's the one way.
Well, I think if the logic is if he tells anyone involved that this is the way we win, then they will maybe possibly change their decision making, therefore making it not the one way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So with that being
Because
said,
things have
though,
to happen in this domino like fashion.
right. So then that takes me back to time travel again. That means Doctor Strange sees the future, but can't explain the future. Well, he can explain it, but he can't, be like, "Hey, this is our plan."
Yeah,
then they're
because
like,
by
"Well,
doing
wait
that,
a second.
it doesn't.
Right. So
it's not
by
happening.
him knowing the future, he can change both the future and the past, if you think about it. So it's kind of like another weird time. The only loopholes really for me are like the timing ones.
Yeah.
And Thanos being killed was just kind of like why? Like why? He's this almighty powerful dude and then just gone. Like,
See, to me, I think you could really. To me, the definition of a plot hole is like something that cannot really be logically explained.
Well, and
in
I
a
think
movie.
logically being explained would be the time travel because, like you said, it's different every movie, and we don't have real life, experience, so we can't sit there and be like, okay, well, when I time traveled,
Yeah, this is what happens.
this is what happened. It becomes one of those, well, in that specific movie, if he can do it, wouldn't that alter every single thing that happened?
Yeah, I think as soon as you make the decision as a writer of a story or as the writers of a story to bring in time travel, you're opening a can of worms because it can get really confusing. And if you don't even if you try and make sure it's as tight as possible storytelling wise, which is what I think they did in this movie, I think it's as tight as they could possibly make it. There's still, it leads to like a million questions like you're bringing up right now.
Well, and the thing is though, like the only reason we're having this discussion is because you question me taking Guardians over it.
Yeah.
In Guardians, I don't question anything because I'm just like, we're going into it like, dude, they're just going to fly around in fucking space, completely, do whatever. Endgame, I sit there and I go, well, wait a second, though. Tony Stark's dead, but then we go back in time and we relive 60 years so that Captain America can come back as an old man.
I think if Captain America would have, because the original plan was like Professor Hulk was going to send him back in time. He was going to go place all of the Infinity Stones back where they originally were in their original timeline, therefore unsplintering all these branches of the timeline that they had created by taking them from the past, making one timeline again. If he had then come right back to their timeline, like Professor Hulk had kind of planned, we wouldn't be having any of these questions.
Right. So
I think now that you're going, okay, how does he, what sort of ramifications does that have that he stayed in the past, lived this life?
Because then you would think Captain
America,
America
and then now he's here in the future. So yeah, so what does that mean? Are there two Captain Americas running out there?
Right.
And the other version of the Captain America lives through the same experiences as this one did, but now there's like two versions of him in the same timeline? How does that work?
You got to think like he couldn't because he was frozen and then they woke him up, 50 years later or 60 years later. So it's one of those things, it's like...
I think it's just kind of like the Harry Potter thing where there's two versions. Like if they time travel back, there's two Hermiones in the same time.
Right. So then...
And they could potentially like run into each other and talk to each other, which would, who knows what would happen if that happened.
Right. But then at the same time, sticking with time travel and not just Captain America, that means Black Widow's not dead because they went back and and that means Gamora's not dead because,
Well, now there is a version of Gamora who is not from this timeline in this timeline now, if that makes sense. Because, she comes with Thanos from the past into the future.
Right.
And when she kicks Star-Lord in the balls, he's the Star-Lord from all of the Guardians events that we've already seen, but she's not the Gamora from all of those events. That Gamora's dead. This is a younger version of Gamora who doesn't have all those experiences.
Right, that we missed all of the Guardians 1.
It's still Gamora, but she's not in love with Star-Lord because she hasn't had all of those experiences with him yet. You know what I mean?
But then,
he's just a stranger to her, basically.
But then again, isn't she killed again by Thanos for the Soul Stone?
No, that's the original Gamora. That's like original timeline Gamora.
See, I haven't watched all of the MCU in, like, what timeline? Because isn't Guardians 2 then, I guess, after... Is it after...
Guardians 2 is still before...
Still before Endgame.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then, Black Widow dies.
Yeah.
And then they go put the Soul Stone back. So it's like, why isn't she back? But I guess she is back, but where in time is she?
Yeah, I mean, there is a version of... I think there is a version of her in the past that is still alive. So, like... Captain America, as he's living his life from the 40s onward and just doing, I don't know what, being like a husband to Peggy and just kind of like getting a job as a postman or something. I don't know what he's doing. He could probably watch the news in 2012 and see Natasha fighting the Loki invasion in New York. Like, she's alive then, because that's her past version.
But the thing, too, is...
And he could probably see a past version of himself in New York fighting. That would be the trippy thing.
Well, right, but because that's the thing, though, is when they show him, he knows who everybody is there.
Yeah.
But he's never met... If that's truly him, he's never met them.
Okay, so I think...
Look at that. See, but I'm bringing up good points.
You are, but I think you're getting really hung up on it, and I don't think...
That's why I went with Guardians, because I didn't have to get hung up on this whole, we could do Endgame Part 2.
It's still Captain America from the original timeline that we've seen. So he's gone through all of the experiences through all of the Captain America / Avengers movies that he showed up in.
Right.
And he's just gone back, returned all of the Infinity Stones, and then just lived out his life up to the moment in 2023 or whenever it is, post killing Thanos and bringing half the universe back. And he knows what spot they're at. And he just goes to that spot and he sits there. And then the Avengers all set up their shop. They have their battle. They're setting up, and they're going to send his younger version back in time. And then he's just sitting there going, "What's up, guys?" And it's like 90-year-old Captain America.
Just lots of questions.
I think that's kind of how the explanation works. So then in the timeline that he lived through as he went back, once he finished putting all of the Infinity Stones back, there's this OG version of Captain America and also a different version of Captain America existing in that timeline.
So then that
version of Captain America is going to go through all the same experiences as him and then possibly do the exact same thing by time traveling back, therefore being a loop, therefore being like the movie Looper. Boom. There's the fucking explanation.
So that means, though, that in the movies, or at least in the MCU, time travel has no effect as far as what you do in the past doesn't affect the future.
I think it does because it creates this splinter timeline. But as long as you go back and undo what you did, it reverts back to the same timeline. I think that was kind of like Hulk's. Remember when Hulk's on the rooftop?
Going back to what you did would mean you have to go back to the present. So he would have to go drop all the stones back and then come back to present so that history continues as it was. But then at the same time, if he goes back to then and puts all the stones back and lives through his whole life, wouldn't that mean Thanos is still alive? Because he just lived. So now we have Thanos Part 2?
No, so I think here
we go, Endgame Part 2.
No, so listen to me. I think where you could honestly question some of this is what happens with Peggy's arc. Because if he goes back in time, stays there and actually lives a life with Peggy, her thinking she's dead, frozen in the Arctic or whatever, like not knowing that he's going to come back. Because, in the original timeline, he doesn't get to reconnect with her until she's like an old woman with Alzheimer's. He visits her in the Winter Soldier. She's like in this hospital bed. And that's it. That's their only reconciliation after 80 years or however long. The version of him from Endgame who goes back in time and then lives with her.
She doesn't get Alzheimer's.
Exactly. I don't know how that affects Peggy's arc. But I think as long as Captain America doesn't get involved with anything and just lives his life, like doing, like I said, doing I don't know what, like getting a job at the post office or something. As long as he doesn't affect anything in terms of the original events that he was involved in, and he lets this other version of him go through those, the timeline still remains the same, and there's just two versions of him in the one timeline, I think. And
then MCU people that listen to this, you better answer our questions.
Yeah, I would honestly, let's take a break. Anyone who is listening to this who is just first of all, thank you for listening to Matt and I just go around and around in circles on this time travel conversation. Thank you. You're a wonderful person.
We will be bringing you another episode on time travel at some point in time.
What do you think? Like, what are your theories? What do you think about Matt's questions? Did you have issues with the time travel aspects of Avengers Endgame? If so, what were they? I like talking through these things as like a thought exercise.
Well, I guess as far as the time travel goes, we can wrap it up on there. We can go through the rest of the results because time travel. We'll sit here and
time travel makes things confusing. Right. Let's just leave it at that.
We'll set aside time for a time travel.
Yeah.
Episode, and we don't even have to do like movie based. We can just try and explain
just
our thoughts of time travel.
Which, by the way, there are some great videos on YouTube. I don't know the specific channels, but I have actually found myself on YouTube looking for explanations to time travel in certain movies. And there are like science-based channels of people who are really into like, theoretical physics and all this kind of stuff who will explain different time travel paradoxes in like short, really easy to understand, like 10-minute videos. They're really cool. They're out there on, like they'll do it in, I watched one that literally broke down different types of time travel from different movies and books. And they explained just in like sketches how it works with like the, people going back and then, this is a different timeline or this is not and all yada, yada, yada. They explained like all of the different versions you can see. And it's super fascinating, but very hard to follow sometimes.
So sometime I'll go watch that.
Yeah.
And then we'll go on.
Yeah.
But let's go through some results from our brackets.
Do it.
I got a few, and I'll just start real quick.
Okay, yeah.
My buddy Josh had Endgame.
Okay.
And his girlfriend had Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, wow. Okay, so an exact split of what we have here.
2 of 2, so...
All right. So, yeah, obviously mine was Endgame. We have a Thor Ragnarok. Meredith picked Thor Ragnarok.
Interesting.
Kimberly picked the original Avengers. Eugene picked Endgame. So there's at least 3 Endgames so far. My lovely fiance Taya picked Endgame, so there's 4 Endgames. And I think this is Ash, that's a scribbled name, but another Thor Ragnarok pick.
Interesting.
So a couple of Thor Ragnaroks in there in the early results
so
here.
Endgames, Guardians, some Thors.
Yeah.
And that's all.
The OG Avengers
that's all
too.
Before this episode. So for those of you at home that are listening, like I said, go to the Podbean website. You can print it off or just look through it. And yeah, let us know who you have winning. Just you can put in the comments on Podbean or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or
put it somewhere where we can
Twitch
see it
or YouTube. Email us. It's all on the Podbean website, and we'll tally up your thoughts as well, and then hopefully as episodes continue to go on and we continue to grow, we'll be able to compile a bigger result list.
Yeah, a bigger pool, a stat pool, yeah.
And then eventually when we're big enough and we're making money doing this and we can pay, a bracket website, we'll be able to just have them filled out online.
And then just tabulate it immediately.
So we'll be able to do something
that would
like
be
that
ideal,
as well.
is to have like live results, people filling out brackets online.
Which, I tried to find, but we don't have the funds in the Just Browsin podcast bank account to enroll in that.
Someday.
Although we do enough brackets, we would probably, be fine. But
yeah, someday.
But someday we'll do that.
Well, this was really fun, man. I had a blast going through. I knew this was going to be fun.
Dude, any of our movie brackets are going to be fun. I'm still trying to work on a Disney one.
Yeah.
And try and,
Well, you and I will have to, like, really talk about which ones we're going to include and which ones we're not going to include.
I believe it's your uncle that's been commenting on
my Uncle Chris. So, shout out to my Uncle Chris, who, if you're listening right now, thank you, Uncle Chris, for providing comments on the Podbean website and on the Instagram page. So for any of you else out there, we will see those comments if you make those on the Podbean website and on any of the social media.
Or if you email us, we do.
He had lots of thoughts on Game of Thrones. I guess they recently wrapped up Game of Thrones, and he maybe was listening to our Game of Thrones episode, so he made a bunch of comments on what he thought, after finishing the series, his thoughts on how it wrapped up and different questions he had and stuff. And then he also had lots of valid thoughts on how we could formulate a war movie bracket.
So what I was going to speak of that was I liked his idea of the dates. So, between certain... Yeah. We could do that with Disney, and I know they had one already made like that where we do early Disney versus each other, and then we kind of do more modern.
Yeah.
I think we could do something like that.
I liked his idea a lot because, as we were kind of talking it through and spitballing on the last episode, it's like you kind of have to do
it's really hard
specific wars going against each other, because it's like, how do you have a World War II movie versus like some movie or some war that was fought in like the 1700s or the 1600s or whatever,
a modern like American Sniper that's based on a true story of arguably the world's greatest, or at least America's greatest sharpshooter. It becomes one of those, you're like, well...
they're so different, and they're dealing with such different subject material that it's hard to have them all in the same bracket. So, I think that one will be a fun one. Real quickly, before we get super sidetracked, have you seen any of the Marvel shows on Disney Plus yet?
I have not yet.
Okay. So we'll save that conversation for once you've seen those, because I thought it'd be kind of cool to talk about that now that we've finished the MCU bracket podcast. But... there's so far they've had WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and then I'm watching Loki right now. Loki's in the middle of their first season.
I've seen the previews for all of them, and I heard WandaVision's not the best. I've heard it's okay, but it's not.
In my opinion, at least so far, we'll see how Loki finishes up. But as of like this very moment, like 4 episodes into Loki, I think Loki's my favorite. WandaVision's my second favorite. Falcon and the Winter Soldier is my third favorite. But I think. Once you've watched those, once you've had a chance to watch those at some point, it'll be interesting to kind of come back and revisit our discussion on the MCU, because these shows on Disney Plus, I think, it's going to give you a pretty good idea of maybe what direction they're going to go post Thanos, which I think was, when we were building this bracket and we were talking about how fun it would be to discuss all these movies, that was one of our big questions, is like, okay, what next?
Because it's like, do we just stop and like Marvel's just done?
Yeah, like, because... to me, and to I think probably a lot of other people, it was like, okay, we were building up to this battle against Thanos, and now we've beaten him, so now what?
Right.
Like what's the big pull now? Because it's kind of like the Game of Thrones comparison. Like, there's all of these other wars and battles and, betrayals going on, but really what you're glued into is what's going to happen when the Night King and all his White Walkers eventually fucking make their way south and start fucking shit up.
Right,
that's the
lead
ultimate
it up.
battle.
I won't even get into
that becomes ultimately important, which is kind of like, you can have these little adventures of Captain America versus the Winter Soldier, and Thor versus his sister Hela in Thor Ragnarok, and like that's all great, and those can all have high stakes. But like the real battle that we're all here for is Thanos. Like, what's going to happen when all of our favorite heroes has to go up against Thanos? And now we've answered that question.
And now what happens?
So now we want to know what's next, or at least I want to know what's next.
Well, and speaking of that. Like, at least Game of Thrones. I think we should do a Game of Thrones Part 2 episode.
I'd be super down.
As soon as I'm done with this.
I'd be super down.
Because I'm going to have so much more in-depth thoughts than just being, like, mind-blown. Because I had literally just finished when we were talking about it. I was just like...
Because I think you were kind of like...
Great. I was overwhelmed.
It's kind of like drinking water from a fire hose, kind of
Yeah.
for you in terms of like Game of Thrones material.
I just was like,
yeah,
it was so good though. I'm so happy. Yes, I am on season 6, episode 3 already, but hey, you know what?
Well, and like I said, I think this would be a good time to revisit it after you've watched it through a second time, because I actually did finish reading the books.
And you've watched
too,
it twice,
so. And I've seen
well.
it twice. Yeah, so we'll have lots of thoughts. I had a lot of fun doing that Iron Throne episode. That was a blast.
Yeah, we'll do a second or part 2 of that. That's not really related as much.
Right.
It'll be its own separate discussion again, but I think we should do that for sure.
Yep, definitely. Well,
so.
I had a lot of fun doing this, man. This was a fucking
man.
blast.
It was fun. Thanks everybody for stopping by. We clearly have a lot of ideas for episodes to come.
Yes.
As we both said multiple times through this episode, feel free to reach out to us with, your thoughts on the MCU bracket, the Pixar bracket. If you go back and you listen to the movie franchise bracket, that one as well, or even the TV show bracket. We're going to be coming out with more brackets. It is a fun, like we discussed earlier, it's fun and easy of a way to discuss these topics.
And we're always happy to go back and revisit topics we've covered on prior episodes too.
Yep.
So.
And then, we'll figure something out for next week. I don't think we have anything set in stone.
I think it won't be a bracket. I think it's safe to say that.
It won't be a bracket.
Yeah.
It'll probably be, I would probably say a laid-back episode.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do Harry Potter. I don't know, because that doesn't really need much.
That'd be fun. I could sit here and shoot the shit about Harry Potter for a while.
Thought going into it. So maybe we'll do a Harry Potter episode next week, and then we'll just keep moving on. Just keep moving. Just keep swinging.
So yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Like we've said a couple times, if you get a chance to go fill out the bracket, definitely do so and let us know what your favorite MCU movie was, because we would like to see some
more Guardians
or Avengers Endgame. We would like to see some more results. Is the point?
Yes, just more results.
So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Talk to you later. All right, you Zero streamers out there. We're just going to end it today because there's absolutely no one here.
It does say we have like one viewer, though. So who is that?
This one viewer is Paulina93.
Who are you? Paulina?
Who does?
Who are you?
I don't know who this person would be.
Paulina93.
I think it might be a bot.
It probably is. It's got 17,000 followers.
Oh, maybe not. Well, Paulina, if you're in here, thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it.
So we're no longer recording, right? We're just in the stream.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And we'll be back with another stream next week for something else.
Liddy.
So thanks, everybody.
Thanks to Paulina for tuning in.